Good morning, my friends. How are you? We're just waiting for people to get on. It is Wednesday, and we are, I haven't forgotten how many days we've been doing this, but quite a few it seems like. And we're going to be reading chapters 7 and 8. I have a question for you. You know, I always have my cup of tea with me when I'm reading in the morning. I start my morning with coffee and then I switch to tea. Oh, hi, Catherine. Thanks for being here. Good. That's always so helpful to know you're here. So I had a question. I thought this would be fun to know. First of all, you can put in the comments, are you a tea drinker or a coffee drinker? And if you're a coffee drinker, if you're a tea drinker, what kind of tea do you like? I'm actually drinking this morning something I got from the Montana Tea and Spice Trading Company. I got to go to Missoula, Montana a couple of years back and went to this little place. They had the best tea. I am absolutely addicted to it. They have all kinds of different types. Good morning. Good. So good to see you all here. Carla's here, Valerie's here, Nancy's here, and of course, Catherine's here. That's so great. Oh, and Joanne. And Joanne loves Oregon chai. Ooh, tell me more about that later, Joanne. I did want to mention a great digital resource. I'm trying to highlight some things for you every day that you might want to do besides this. And I wanted to let you know that a good friend of mine, a fellow author who also writes a lot of quilt-themed fiction named Frances Dowell, is doing an audio read-along of her book, Aunt Jane of Kentucky. And you can find that on her podcast, which is quiltfiction.com/podcast, but I've got the link there in the thing. Oh, let's see. Somebody gave me a mad face. Why do we have a mad face? Lois, why do we have a mad face? I hope you're not upset. Maybe you just hit the wrong button. I hope so. Anyway, let's see. Oh, from Arizona Coffee, but your tea sounds great. It is great. It is great. All right. So we are reading chapters 7 and 8 from a single thread today. And as I said, I just like getting right to it. So I think yesterday I was trying to read a little too fast. So I'm going to try and slow myself down a bit with my reading today. Ready? Here we go. Chapter 8, Evelyn Dixon. It was a Saturday in midsummer, which meant that even at 7:12 in the morning, the Blue Bean Coffee and Baking Company was crowded. The bells above the door jingled cheerily as I walked inside, and the line of customers waiting for their morning fix of Java turned to look at me. After only a few months in New Bern, it was easy for me to distinguish the tourists from the locals. It was all about the clothes. The tourists, or the NFH, as Charlie called them, which stood for not from here, fell into two fashion categories: those who were from New York and only owned black clothing, and those who were also from New York and tried to fit into the New England landscape but didn't. The latter sported a kind of Ralph Lauren country preppy chic, with fabric so crisp and bright you knew that they'd been purchased at Saks the day before, a dead giveaway. The locals were the ones wearing the authentic version of New England style that designers romanticized: run-over loafers worn with no socks, faded cotton button-downs, slightly wrinkled chinos, and, because a summer rain had chilled the air, pilled, shapeless sweaters with varying degrees of wear at the elbows. New Englanders believe in getting value for their money, and as long as the yarn stayed more or less knit together, they kept wearing the same sweater they did every year. Fashion trends didn't enter into it. I know a man well into his 50s who proudly wears the same blue cashmere his mother bought for his freshman year at Yale. It's stretched so tight over his post-freshman stomach that you can see pinpoints of his undershirt peeking through the weave, but he insists it still has plenty of wear in it. He's a true blue Yankee. All of them, the locals and the NFH alike, looked grumpy. The NFH because they couldn't understand why these yokels didn't take a tip from Starbucks and hire enough people for an assembly line instead of relying on one 17-year-old girl to take orders, ring them up, and then, one at a time and taking her time, brew, steam, ice, blend, or foam every individual drink. Likewise, the locals were irritated because they knew that if these people who were not from here were somewhere else, they'd have had their coffee 20 minutes ago. And though my livelihood depended on the patronage of both groups, at the moment I stood firmly on the side of the locals. I needed my coffee, and I needed it now. Sitting at one of the Blue Bean's only 2 tables, a man rattled a newspaper as he turned the page and cleared his throat. It was Charlie. He lowered the paper and peered over the top. "You're late," he said, holding out a cardboard cup. "I was 30 seconds from drinking your coffee." "Sorry." I stepped out of line and pulled up a chair. The other customers, still caffeine deficient, glared at me, jealous of my good fortune. "Thanks for ordering for me. I thought you'd already come and gone." Several months before, I'd run into Charlie at the Blue Bean, and it had become our habit to have our morning coffee together. I dug $3 out of my purse to pay him back. He put the money in his pocket and then folded up the paper. "How can you possibly be late? You only live half a block and 1 flight of stairs from here. Looking at the state of your hair, I know it wasn't because you were up there primping in front of your mirror." "Thanks very much. It's not like it's not like you're so much to look at in the morning yourself." "True, but Irishmen are known more for our wit and words than looks. Rakish and frumpy. It's part of my charm." "Seems to me that you rack up a lot of things to your Irish charm." "Well, I'm a charming man," he shrugged. "So you are. At times." I took a first sip of coffee, closing my eyes and savoring the moment. I needed that. I didn't get to bed until 2. "Out salsa dancing, were you? Having yourself a little TGIF party?" "Well, not quite. More like trying to balance my books and then doing it again, hoping to come up with some different figures." I yawned. "And did you?" Charlie asked. I shook my head. "Sadly, no. If something doesn't change drastically, and soon, the naysayers of New Bern might turn out to be right in their predictions. Cobbled Court may not live to celebrate its 6-month anniversary." Charlie looked at me, his blue eyes concerned. "Oh, come now, it can't be as bad as all that." "The grand opening was just 2 months ago. You started out so well." He was right. I had. In spite of the flood caused by the broken pipe and some delay in receiving my first shipments of fabric, Cobbled Court Quilts opened its doors for business right after Memorial Day, just in time for the tourist season. It was a huge relief. A good summer was crucial to my survival. I could expect to make as much as 60% of my annual income between Memorial and Labor Days. To attract customers on my first day of business, a beautiful Saturday, I took out an ad in the local newspaper and hung banners saying "Grand Opening" at both entrances to Cobbled Court. I even hired one of Charlie's off-duty dishwashers to hand out flyers to the people on Commerce Street, advertising the grand opening sale, offering 10 fat quarters for the price of 7 and 15% off all Bolt fabrics and classes, plus refreshments and a drawing for a Mariner's Compass quilt I'd made as a class sample. That was Mary Dell's idea. When I'd phoned with the big news that at long last I was ready for business, she suggested a raffle as a good way to build a customer mailing list. "Plus, if folks come in and take a look at the quilt, they'll be more likely to sign up for the class," she said. "Great idea. And even if they aren't interested in that particular pattern, I'll have their names and addresses so I can send them a flyer whenever I have a new sale or class brochure." Thanks for the idea, Mary Dell. After all this time, I almost can't believe that this is actually going to happen. I'm about to open my own quilt shop. It's just so exciting. "Well, I'm excited for you, darling," Mary Dell drawled. "And I got some news myself. I hadn't wanted to tell you before because I wasn't sure it was really going to happen, but I got a call yesterday." She paused just long enough to give me a chance to guess her news. "Don't tell me," I squealed. "Your book, they're going to publish it." When we'd met, Mary Dell told me she had written a quilting book that she'd titled Family Ties. It gave advice on quilting with children and featured a variety of unique patterns, from the simple to the complex, that families could do together. She'd written it when Howard was little and sent it out to publishers, but none of them had been interested. Recently, noting the increased interest in all kinds of crafts, she decided to try again. obviously with more success than she'd had on the first go-round. "Oh, Mary Dell, that is amazing news. I'm just so happy for you." I could practically hear her grinning through the phone line. "Yeah, I'm pretty happy myself. In fact, if I were any happier, I'd drop my heart plumb through the clouds." "That is fabulous. You're an author." "Well, not yet, but soon. Sometime next year, so they tell me." "Of course," she said modestly, "I don't expect they'll sell more than about 40 copies. Me and Howard will probably buy 38 of them." "What are you talking about? I'm going to order some for the shop today, just so I make sure to get mine before they run out. And when you are a big, famous quilting writer, you've got to promise me to come and teach a class at Cobbled Court. I'll probably have to rent chairs just to make room for everybody." Mary Dell laughed aloud at the audacity of my vision. "Sure thing, darling. If I'm ever a big, famous quilting writer, I'll come teach at your shop. But that'll probably happen about the time that pigs fly. But if you look up in the clouds some morning and see porkers on parade, then go ahead and rent those chairs, baby girl. I'll be there. In the meantime, I'll be praying for your grand opening, that your grand opening is a real big success." And it was. On that first weekend, I was swamped with customers. Well, really, there were more browsers than customers, but by the end of the first day, I'd signed up 4 people for the Mariner's Compass class, 7 for the beginner's class, added 98 names to my mailing list, and rung up nearly $2,000 in sales. At the time, it seemed like a fortune. I went to bed that night exhausted, but encouraged that I was off to a great start. And really, I was. And though I soon discovered that exhaustion is a permanent condition of a quilt shop owner, I loved what I was doing. Not surprisingly, my favorite part of running the shop was the creative side, teaching classes, sewing samples, helping customers pick out fabrics, answering questions about difficult projects, and of course, poring over the catalogs and samples, trying to decide which fabrics, books, and notions I should stock. I'd opened my doors with 2,000 bolts of fabric, 500 more than I planned on at first, but I knew that the bigger the fabric inventory, the more likely I'd be to attract quilters from places other than New Bern. If Cobbled Court Quilts was going to survive, it had to be a shop that quilters would drive out of their way to visit. There just weren't enough quilters in New Bern to support it. I had to draw a regional audience. It was a surprise to discover that I also enjoyed the business side of the shop. Not that doing accounting, keeping up with inventory, or managing invoices was exactly a thrill, but it worked a part of my brain that I'd let lie dormant for many years. Sure, I made plenty of mistakes, but I was managing the whole operation on my own. I couldn't help but feel proud of my accomplishment and more confident than I had in years. You know, it's odd, but on that day when Rob walked into our kitchen, the kitchen we'd remodeled the year previously with granite countertops that Rob had said I'd better make sure I liked because we were going to have to live with them until we died or moved into the old folks' home. When he walked into that kitchen that day, stood next to the island where I was chopping green peppers and said he wanted a divorce, I felt so stupid. Yes, I also felt betrayed, bereft, heartbroken, abandoned, all those emotions I'd imagine women must feel when their husbands walked out on them. Women whose number I was certain I would never, ever be among. But I had never once thought to add stupidity to that list. But when the unthinkable happened, there it was. How could I have been so stupid? How could I have believed that buying granite countertops with a lifetime warranty meant that my marriage was similarly guaranteed against chips, scrapes, younger women, and midlife crisis? It was such a cliche. And I'd never seen it coming. How could I have given my trust to a man who proved so untrustworthy? I felt like a fool. For a long time after that, I didn't trust my own judgment about anything. The thought of having to make decisions simply paralyzed me. Once, when a harried grocery clerk with a long line of customers asked if I wanted paper or plastic, I stood there stammering and unable to decide for what seemed like an eternity. Finally, the clerk lost patience and angrily stuffed my bread into a plastic bag, then piled 2 cans of diced tomatoes and a box of dishwasher detergent on top of the loaves, squashing them flat. I was so embarrassed that I didn't say anything. Just handed her a $50 bill